ये पार्टी।
I was born from life to breathe into life. But I forgot to live. I forgot my will to choose, my conscience to be. Forgot my freedom to choose, my response to change. Not anymore. My roads are rivers, my light the moon, my body the forest, my witness the stars. They say accept chaos, become Zen, one with yourself. They never tell you how. Find your way, they say. The only Zen I know is when I rev and thumb, and when she and I complete the union and become whole. Get on one and find yours. Who are we? We are your conscience. We are your independence. We are your free will. We are your Zen. We are your true bearings. We are Enfield Riders.
we have our speaker with us. So, uh, okay. Good afternoon, everyone. This is your host, Piyush Chandak, student member, Srijan Entrepreneurship Cell. And today, I welcome you all to this amazing session titled Dialogue with Mr. Gujral, organized by Srijan Entrepreneurship Cell, Acropolis Institute. Srijan eCell is an organization that aims on fostering entrepreneurship amongst young students and builds a spark of creativity. And today we have one such creative personality with us, Mr. Baljeet Gujral. Mr. Gujral is an entrepreneur, business coach, startup mentor, and an active public speaker. He has been a serial entrepreneur and has been successfully running two ventures in the travel and lifestyle experiences space. His first startup, on Enfield Riders, is one of the most respected adventure travel companies, and Bucket List Experiences is his second venture. He is an alumnus of NITJ, Oxford, and IIM Calcutta. Prior to starting his journey, he has a decade of experience with the banking and financial services industry. Sir, we are glad to have you amongst us today. I'm sure our participants would be very excited to know more about your journey and your experiences.
Hi, thank you, Piyush, for the kind introduction. And I'm very happy and delighted to be a part of this session. I'm glad that I have an opportunity to interact with this region entrepreneurship cell and the participants today. So I'm going to keep this session as interactive as I can, and the whole
Yes, sir.
objective of the session that I would like would be that I can provide key takeaways for all the students that they would have if they would like to pick up entrepreneurship as their journey, how my experience could actually help them in starting off their journey, and if I could provide any tools, any frameworks which would be useful for them, I will be delighted to do that.
Yes, sir. So, without wasting any further time, I would like to just let our participants know more about you. So, maybe, sir, where are you located right now, and how's the weather, and just things like that. So, we get started
Yes.
with our session.
So I am actually before I start the session, just a disclaimer that I'm doing the session from my home. So if in case there is a bell which goes off, or if you hear a dog barking in the background, please excuse me for those small errors. But I'll try and keep it as non-disturbance as it's possible.
Yes, sir. Since our participants are mostly interested in knowing about startups and how did you begin in your journey, so let me begin with our first question. So, I noticed that you have changed your fields. So, you were earlier in the finance sector and you just switched and changed to a completely different domain. So, how and when did you decide to make this change?
Right. So just to give you a quick background about myself, so uh, I did my schooling from Bombay, and I was born and brought up in Bombay till I finished my 10th standard. And for my plus one and plus two, I actually moved to a small town on the border of Maharashtra, Karnataka, and Andhra. It's called a small city called Bidar, which is basically an educational hub. And I did my plus one, plus two from there, primarily because of the reason that that city provided with the flexibility of uh, applying for a engineering as well as for a medical entrance,
Okay.
because bio and maths both were not as an option but compulsory. So I applied to both medical fields and engineering entrance examinations, and I was fortunate that I got through both. So this was, I'm talking about in the year 2000, so about almost 20 years ago.
So, that
Uh,
must be an exciting time.
Yes, absolutely. And actually, it was also very competitive. So I had appeared for the joint entrance examinations for IIT, and unfortunately, I didn't get through that. But then I had applied for NIT, which was National Institute of Technology,
Yes, sir.
and I did my get through. I got through my engineering there. I am actually a civil engineer. So I spent about 4 years at National Institute of Technology, Jalandhar. I finished my engineering and then I applied for my master's at Oxford immediately after my engineering, and I was fortunate enough to get through that. To which later then I moved to London. I did my master's in Oxford for about 2 years, and then I worked briefly in London for about a year and a half. So primarily, finance and banking actually happened then. I got my first job in banking and finance when I was in UK,
Yes,
and
sir.
to be very honest with you, you know, it was just a job that came up and I picked it up. So I never was, focused that I wanted to get into banking or finance, but it was a well-paying job, and investment banking profile is any which way is like a white-collar profile. So I picked it up, and when I returned back to India after a few years, I continued my stint with being an investment banker for about 7 8 years. So finance was not a chosen field that I wanted to pick up, but I did pursue that primarily because I started my career with that.
Yes, sir. So, since you have worked at major banks, would you like to tell our audience about your learnings from the finance sector? Has it helped you in some way?
Of course. So I think so. In my career of about 9 years that I've spent in corporate segment, especially in the finance segment, I have worked for various Indian and international banks. So I started my career with Royal Bank of Scotland. Then I worked with ICICI. I worked with Axis Bank. I've worked with Standard Chartered Bank, and then finally, before I actually hung my boots at banking, I was working with a Swiss bank called UBS, uh, and I think my experience with finance and banking actually taught me a lot as to how to handle money. So I think primarily for anybody who thinks of getting into business or who wants to get into entrepreneurship, I think it's a very, very critical factor of understanding how to handle finances and handling money,
Yes.
which I think I got an experience, hands-on experience, only when I did my job at a banking sector.
Yes, sir. Definitely, finances and money play a big role in the startup industry.
Right.
So, taking a different route now. So, I'm sure all of our friends here would have planned a trip to Ladakh or maybe to to a nice place like Goa. So, how did you decide upon taking this different venture? And do you have interest of traveling and adventure? Do you have a taste for riding as well?
So yes, so basically, coming to the basics, that why did I start with the bike touring company was primarily because I was very interested in. I was very passionate about travel, and I was very passionate about motorcycling. So I began my journey with starting off my venture in that space because I was very passionate about that space, and I was really looking forward to build adventure as a business. And I found that as an opportunity in India, because even today, if you see, adventure in India is not as big as it is in European countries, or it is in the Middle East, or even in Southeast Asia. So I think
Definitely.
India has a huge potential even now. I mean, like, although I started my adventure business 8 years ago, but I still feel adventure-based businesses in India have far bigger potential than other streams that you could think of.
Okay. So, moving on, I would like to know what is your company all about? I mean, what does it do? So, Would you
Right.
please elaborate on
Yeah.
that?
So I primarily run two ventures. The first one is an adventure travel company called Enfield Riders.
Yes.
It's a motorcycle touring company for people who would be interested in actually checking about the company. I'm just dropping the website address. You could click
Yes.
on that, but I'll just give you a quick brief as to what the company is about. The company basically organizes adventure tours within India and abroad. So, if you would like to take a road trip on a motorcycle or on a four-wheel drive from India to Singapore, or say from India to Australia, or within India, or say Bhutan, Nepal, Sri Lanka, Tibet, any country that you would like, we organize those tours and organize all logistics that are required for that tour.
Okay.
uh, and these could be done within a budget that you any client would want to pick up at. So it's a very customized, curated kind of trip.
Oh, so it's just for the customer, customized and
Yes, yes. And I'm also dropping a website, which is my another company. So this is Bucket List Experiences. This is a kind of a experiential travel company. What we do is, as you know, bucket list word means that people who would want to do things before they die. So
taking
bucket list
off.
experiences are is a company where we plan and execute any kind of experiences that are of your liking. So say if you would like to learn how to roll a cigar, we can do like a cigar rolling classes for you. Or if you would like to go bungee jumping or skydiving, we can plan that for you. Or say, for example, you would want to plan a bachelor's trip, all boys or all girls, we can do a bachelorette trip for you. So you just need to, we help you basically tick your bucket list and help you create one.
Okay, so that sounds really exciting. And I wanted to know what was your inspiration behind the first company, because that must have been really special.
Yes,
So,
yes.
yeah,
So see, I think when anyone, I mean, like me or any entrepreneur that you talk to, I think entrepreneurs are made of one thing, which is primarily solving a problem. You know,
yes,
so every entrepreneur is out there solving a problem. People who are not there solving a problem are primarily businessmen. So there is a difference between entrepreneurship and being a businessman because there are two different definitions altogether. Often people, get confused between the two, saying that I am a business owner but I am an entrepreneur. So it's two different things. Entrepreneurs build things which will basically solve problems. So I was very passionate about travel and adventure, and I and my wife used to take a lot of trips pan India. So we used to like maybe fly to Indore, and meet a friend there. Say Piyush is my friend. I'll meet him and I'll say, "Can I borrow your bike?" And I would want to do a trip, say to. Uh, there's a famous temple near Indore.
I think it's near Bhopal. Sanchi Stupa is there near Bhopal.
Yeah, or
Uh,
any, yeah. So say any other
we
place which
have
is
Ujjain,
closer.
so Ujjain is very famous.
Yeah, or if I would like to go, I don't know how far is the national park from Indore. Say it's about a 6 hours ride or a 5 hours ride. I would pick a bike from Piyush, go on that bike trip to the Shanti Stupa or maybe to the national park, spend about 3 4 days, come back, give the bike to Piyush, and then fly back to Bombay. Uh,
Okay.
so when I used to do this, I figured out that there was no player in India who was providing this as an organized platform. So I wanted to build an organized platform where people like me who were wanting those services but had no access to a service provider could get
Yes.
everything served on a platter. So I saw a problem that there are adventure seekers like me, but there are no adventure providers who could actually solve my problem. So that is how the idea of Enfield Riders came into picture, to build it like a one-stop shop for adventure travelers, wherein they could come, rent out bikes, plan a trip. We will provide logistics assistance. We'll provide technical support. So you don't have the hassle of saying that if I go on the trip, what would happen next. You can leave that worry aside, and we'll take care of planning and executing the same for you. So that was the idea behind the first company.
So that's an excellent advice actually. You find a problem and you solve it,
Yes,
and that's the best way.
right,
Okay.
right.
So my next question is, how does this company operate? So do you manage all the logistics? I mean, the bikes and the rentals and everything?
Yes, so it's basically if so we work on there are two kind of business models. One is called like a asset heavy model, and the other is a asset light model. So when we
Okay.
began our business, we're a very asset heavy business, wherein we would provide everything right from motorcycles to safety gear, which was bought at our end and provided at a service fee to our clients. But
Yes.
then we realized that as we were scaling our business, as we were becoming bigger, making it asset heavier was becoming more expensive for us, and that's when we moved to an asset light model.
Okay.
And we then basically moved it where we could lease it out from other service providers, but the services were provided on front end by us. So I
Okay.
could, rent out a bike from Piyush, but for the clients, the front end would be Enfield riders. So you become like a supplier to me, and I am becoming a front end. So my model is asset light, but I basically sublease it from others.
Okay. So, I mean, I'm really curious about these two terms. So, asset heavy and asset light.
Yeah.
So, can you elaborate more on that? Is it depending on the startup that you have, or like one is good for one type of business and the other one is good for another type? So, is that so?
Yeah. So see, basically, there are two kind of businesses. One is which is called a brick and mortar business, wherein for example, your stores, like your
Right.
grocery store or your any product store, like a shoe store or a bag store or a cloth store. These are all brick and mortar models, which become asset heavy because you need to have real estate for that. You need to have a shop. You need to rent it out or buy it. You need to pay electricity bill. You need to have other expenses. So it is basically having an asset and servicing it. uh, and the other is basically asset light model, which are mostly online businesses, wherein you
Okay.
don't have like an inventory that you have to spend on. You basically just become like a front end to service your clients. So
Okay.
it's not like that it's very asset light, but it is comparatively cheaper. But again, with online businesses, there are other expenses, but they are not as heavy as brick and mortar stores.
Okay, so basically you put your whole business virtually on the board and then you reduce your costs by a
Yeah.
big fraction. Okay, so since we have been talking about this business, sir, what does your company do so differently that makes it so unique? How is it so different from the other people out there?
Yeah, so see, basically, there are other travel companies who basically work uh, on a model wherein they will have only service partners, wherein the services are broken up. So like for example, if you want to do a 10-day trip to Leh Ladakh, just an example, yeah.
Okay,
So if you want to do a trip, you will go to a service provider where he'll say you book your hotels and we'll provide you the bikes. But if there is a breakdown, this is a mechanic that you can reach out to. So the services are actually distributed. Whereas on a platform like ours, we do planning to execution everything. So if you come to us, you just need to bring a bag of clothes and not worry about your travel, not worry about renting a vehicle, not worry about hotel bookings, not worry about technical support. Everything is taken care of. So ideally, the whole format becomes the USP is that you become like a one-stop shop. So it
okay,
becomes easier access for clients, wherein they say that if I have to go to a provider which is giving me breakup services versus B provider which is giving me end-to-end services, then they prefer somebody with end-to-end services.
Okay. So as you said, it's like a one-stop shop. You don't
Yeah.
need to worry about anything. All right.
Yes.
So we'll take the next question. So now I think we can also move on to your second venture. So what was the whole process like, and where did you get the idea from?
Right. So, so it is again in a travel space. We have been an adventure travel company, and we figured that adventure is one area that we cater to, but we always wanted to build up another venture which could be much broader, which was beyond adventure. And that's when Bucket List Experiences was started about 3 years ago now. And
Okay.
where we decided that beyond adventure, if people want to take curated experiences, we will provide those.
Okay. How does this company work? Is it joined in with your first venture? So,
So they both are two independent entities altogether, but as two different brands under one parent company.
okay.
Yeah.
So I think you must be a big player in that lifestyle and adventure industry. And
Well, we are doing our best in probably creating like a benchmark in that space. So, what I would also want is I'm also sharing another link with everybody on the chat window. If you are on the chat window, you can have a look.
yeah,
So, a lot of material that we basically have on entrepreneurship and basically content which is available free for all students. You can have a look at this link and probably you'll get more content on entrepreneurship. I'm replying with respect to the message which was earlier put in that creative thinking with a little bit critical thinking is the best recipe for entrepreneurship. So I totally agree to that. And on those lines, I thought of sharing the entrepreneurship link with you guys.
yeah. So I'm sure all these links would be very helpful. And I would request our participants to kindly check all of them out. And we'll even provide all those links after the session. So that would be, thank you so much for all the help you have done, sir. And this
So
is
my
just the
pleasure.
beginning of our session. And since we have talked about your two different ventures and how they're independent, I would also like to know how do you manage two different startups parallelly?
Yeah, so very interesting question. So see, it's a very difficult task at hand, of managing two business. Primarily, because the way a culture of one company works will be very different from a culture of another company. You have different HR policies, you have different business operations, you have a different revenue streams coming from various businesses. But I think what generally helps me or helps any entrepreneur who are serial entrepreneurs and who keep building businesses is compartmentalizing the whole business, as saying that like we were able to start our second business when our first business went on auto mode. So it is very important that you build a business, you build a structure that without your day-to-day interference also the business can run smoothly. And once you're able to achieve that, and once you're able to build a second line, so we have like a senior management team which manages the first business, you know that you can not completely take your hands off, but you know that your involvement becomes lesser and lesser for day to day things. So,
Okay.
all my involvement in the first business is more giving strategic advice and inputs. And on the second business, I'm right now working more in terms of building and scaling it. So that becomes on auto mode on the next 1 year or 2 years, and then I can start with another venture.
Okay. So you're already planning on bringing out a new venture.
Yes, yes.
Okay. So that's really exciting. I mean, this must be a lot of motivation for our students that you must never stop learning and trying new things.
Right.
Sir, I mean, you talked about making a business or a startup on auto mode.
Yeah.
So how did you do that? What was your process like for that?
So see, I think primarily the first thing that you need to do for any business that you begin and start with is to make it profitable, right? Any business initially when you begin with, so whether you have invested your money or you have borrowed funds or you have raised capital, raised funding to run the business, any business can only self-sustain itself when it starts generating profits.
Yes,
Now,
definitely.
the profit generation can take 1 year, can take 2 years, can take 3 years. But once profit starts churning out, you know that your income can take care of your expenses, because till then you are actually funding the expenses from your own pocket. Once you can maintain that balance, your income is funding the expenses, and then the balance amount can be either reinvested in the business or you can take home the profit. That's when you know that your business is on auto mode. So
Okay.
then taking it to the next level, what is most critical is to build a senior capable team that you think that would be able to take decisions on your behalf or the way you would want to take decisions. So
Yes.
ideally, every business has three major streams. One is sales and marketing, the other is operations, and the third is customer service. Of course, you have other verticals, like you have your business development team, you have an accounting team, you have a finance team, but these three are very critical pillars of sales and marketing, operations, and client experience. If you can actually find senior people who can actually head these divisions, most of the businesses have the capability of getting into auto mode. So I think for any business owner or an entrepreneur, it is very critical that you focus on two things: one, making the business profitable, and second, building the second line of senior member team.
So, I mean, these two are the important points a businessman or maybe a startup founder should look on to. Turning out and moving towards profits, and then building a team of people you can trust.
Right.
The next question is just related to this.
Sorry.
How do you handle the day-to-day operations, as in terms of the relationships with your co-workers or maybe the decisions you take? So what is the way you deal with it?
So see, I think first thing is that when you build up any company and when you like begin a startup, it starts with much lesser people. When you scale the business, it actually starts becoming like a proper company where you probably will have 10, 20, 30, 50, 100 employees. Uh, I think what is the defining thing for any company is primarily the culture that you want to build in the company. So, like in our companies, we have a culture of autonomy. When I say autonomy, is each person is responsible for the decisions they take and the results that those decisions bring in. So, for example, if my sales team says that there is a contract that they would want to execute, but they had given a client a pricing of X rupees, but the client is asking for a discount of 10%. So it is completely up to them to offer that 10%, provided that they ensure that the company profits are maintained. So it cannot be at the cost of company profits, but they have the flexibility and the autonomy of taking decisions. Now, what benefit this brings in is that it actually makes people more responsible when decision making ability is given to them and the consequences that the decision making ability brings. So that becomes a culture or a DNA of the company. Once you establish that, I think functioning day to day with employees, with people, understanding their work styles becomes very easy because there are no layers. So we have like an open door policy wherein we have a team of about 70, 80 people, and we have an open door policy wherein right from the junior most member in the company to the senior most member in the company has direct access to me. So of course they have managers, they have reporting lines and anything, but we have an open door policy wherein if they have any questions, any doubts, any suggestions, any complaints, they can walk up to the senior most person in the company or the founders and share it. So that becomes the culture and the DNA of the company, and then coordinating with people becomes much more easier.
That is actually so beautiful. I mean, you can directly contact the most important person in the room and then provide your suggestion.
Right.
So I think having a culture is so vital. It
Yes.
also brings out a sense of connection to the company. I mean,
Absolutely.
you are connected to the company, to a place you work for. So
Absolutely.
that was a great point, I think, sir. And the next thing is a little more into the serious side. So, if in case you encounter maybe a problem or say there is a crisis, so how do you handle those situations?
Sorry, how do you handle?
Those type of situations in which you have a problem or maybe there is something that is not working out. So, how do you handle that situation?
So is it primarily within the company that we have problems or issues? Are you talking about that?
Yes, sir. Basically about that.
Okay. So I think primarily what happens is that see, challenges and problems are a part of every entrepreneur's everyday life. I can assure you and I can bet you that I see that so many of you would become future entrepreneurs and would start your own businesses. I would want every entrepreneur to accept and realize this at earliest possible before you start your journey, that you need to get accustomed and adapted to problems coming on a very regular basis. Because the entrepreneur needs to fight at all levels, whether it is finance, whether it is people management, whether it is handling clients. So handling problems becomes like a part of your everyday role. When you say that what is my role and responsibility, actually my role and responsibility in my company is to handle problems. So when we basically structure it in a format that to handle problems, we do it in a certain kind of framework wherein we try and address problems as to accountability. Like, if a client comes to me and says that he has had a bad experience at any of the trip, now that's a problem for us, right? How do we address it? Is first we figure out that who's the right accountable person for that. So the accountability for service quality is at two divisions. One is operations and the other is client experience. So we try and first get into the detail of things once we know the accountable team. So we'll ask the operations that where did you guys go wrong in terms of not meeting the client expectations, because we would have committed a certain bit of things to the clients, and it's the responsibility of the operations team to execute those commitments. The other team which is responsible is client experience, wherein who has to take care of that if there is a problem which comes up, how do they get it resolved then and there, because you can't keep it till the end of the trip or end of event.
Exactly.
So once we know the accountability, then we get into the details of the problem, and once we know the cause of the problem, we try and ensure and rectify that in future those problems, how do we address them. So then we come up with brainstorming sessions, we come up with understanding from various teams that what are their thoughts in terms of setting processes. So I think every problem can be addressed once you actually have a process to make sure that they do not occur over and over again. So I think we give a lot of importance to framework and processes to address problems.
Okay. So that route of steps, I mean, exact procedure helps you a lot
Yes,
because if in case you encounter any kind of problem, you would have a way to approach it.
yes, because without that, otherwise you'll get lost. I mean, like, you'll not know what to do and how to handle it if you don't have it a structure or a process to actually address it.
And to encounter different problems every day, you must
Yeah,
have a way to deal with them. You
right.
cannot just stop at every problem, just choosing it.
Correct.
Definitely. So, I mean, the next question is, if in case there is some situation which just cannot be resolved, or maybe say a bad experience of the customer, and now since it's done, so what do you do about that? I mean, the trip is over. So do you also have a feedback system?
So we work very, very extremely in terms of client feedback. Our DNA of the organization and our structure of the organization is completely incentivized. Or so say, for example, any manager or any staff, they have yearly bonuses, they have yearly promotions, and they have yearly increments. So one very important parameter for addressing that primarily comes from client feedback. So if any team or any staff member doesn't get positive feedbacks and reviews, it actually impacts their overall performance at the end of the financial year, which further impacts their salary increments or bonuses. In that way, we basically keep all our staff aligned that client experience and feedback is so important that it would directly impact their performance at the end of the year. That basically keeps them motivated and on their toes, that they are not there just to do their day-to-day jobs, but they are there to make sure that the client experience is at the optimum. And that is one reason I'm happy to share this, that for a company, Enfield Riders, if you just Google it, so TripAdvisor is one platform which basically evaluates every travel company in the world. So any hotel, any travel agent, any tour operator, any adventure company will be listed on TripAdvisor. And TripAdvisor becomes like a benchmark for any company. So like if you go to TripAdvisor and say, I want to stay in Indore and which is the best hotel, TripAdvisor will show you recommendations which are the highly rated hotels, which are rated by clients. So it's basically on client ratings. And we have been featured as the most recommended adventure company in India with a certificate of excellence for the last 3 years on TripAdvisor. So we have a 5-star rating with more than about 1,000 plus clients that we have got, and which rates us amongst the top in India.
So that's wonderful news. I mean, purely the effort that you put in,
Yes.
you have put the results.
Right.
And sir, like since we talked about co-workers and how do you provide incentive to them, what do you think is the importance of teamwork in any organization? So teamwork and bringing the spirit of bringing everyone together.
Right, right. So see, like a company like ours is a very young company. So most of the people who work in our company, the average age will be about 25, 26. Which will be mostly people like you who will be passing out of college, maybe have a couple of years experience and then would join our company. So the average age actually defines a lot about the culture of the company. Uh, what we do is, instead of calling them a team, we call them the tribe. So there's a lot of difference between the team and the tribe. So what happens the moment I say that, Piyush, uh, everybody at Acropolis is not just working with you as a team, but as a tribe. Immediately there is a different kind of bonding which comes, because people treat tribe members with more trust, with more faith. It almost becomes like you have people to fall back upon. They become more like your family than co-workers. So I think we actually put in a lot of thought in building that culture in the company, where the moment these young people like you who joined, we called them tribe members, and there was a different kind of bonding which happened. So, uh, say tomorrow, if one department person has not been able to attend office for 5 days, the other department person would not say that this is not my job, because he's just a co-worker. For them it becomes, no, he's my tribe member. If he cannot do it, I will fall back for him. It's almost like, don't attend the class today, I will give a proxy on your behalf. So it's like a tribe on that behalf.
So everyone is there to support each other. I
Yes,
mean,
yes,
it's really beautiful.
yeah,
And having that sense of belonging and that culture is so important. So,
absolutely.
how did you decide upon this idea that you want to have this sense of culture, a sense of belonging in your company?
So I think it comes from a lot of thought that again we are a very people-centric company. So some companies are product-centric, wherein, say for example, uh, I have a bottling plant and I just make bottles, Bisleri bottle. Now, for me, I am a product company. For me, water is something that I'm selling, and my focus is actually on product development, on manufacturing, or whatever you may call. Businesses like ours run on people. So if at the final end my execution is a person executing it, if I have to give a service to a client, I do not have a robot or I do not have a product that the client looks at and gets happy. The client will only get happy when they interact with the right kind of people that they would want to interact with. Yeah. So we are a very people based company, and in people based company the most important thing is actually people, and building the culture amongst the people, and building the bonding amongst the people. So we were very clear since inception that our asset is not the product, it is the service which will be delivered by our people. And hence it automatically became a focus that what could we do to first, like we have a saying in our company that we are a company which is employee first and then customer second. In most companies it's customer first, right? But here we are, if we can't keep our employees happy, our employees will never be able to keep our customers happy. So we are a very employee centric organization, very people driven organization, and automatically everything that we do or everything that we built was keeping in mind that people happiness is the core of the company.
Yes, because at the end of the day, your people are the ones who will be serving your customers,
Exactly.
and they will be the ones who will be bringing out the value out of your products and the services you offer.
Right.
Right. Okay. Sir, the next question is that I read on your LinkedIn profile that you have completed your education from prestigious places like Oxford and Stanford. So, what are your learnings from those years and maybe from your student life that have helped you throughout?
So, so to be very honest with you, I think I've been very fortunate to be a product of these institutions because, of course, these are world-renowned institutions, and the quality of education and the quality of delivery of education is very, high standard, high class. I think one of the most important takeaways, whether it is Stanford or whether it is at Oxford, that I have, you know, uh, taken back from there is it is not what you learn there, it is what you learn and then implement from there. Because, you know, I interact with a lot of students from different institutions. Like today, I'm doing with a session with you. Yesterday, I was doing a session with Narsi Monji. Last week, I did a session with Symbiosis College. And I do a lot of uh, interactions. And in my interactions, I realize that uh, most students think that it matters that what institute you are passing out from. But trust me, 5 years, 10 years down the line, when you pass out, yes, your institute will matter at some level, but what matters more is what you learned from that institution and what have you implemented in those 5, 10 years. So you may be a MBA or you may be a, you know, master's in something, but that's just a tag for you. If you have not taken what you have learned and implemented in your life, it doesn't matter whether I am from Stanford or you are from Srijan. Uh, it will only matter a lot if you take these learnings and actually implement in your life, whether you are working in a corporate culture or whether you are becoming an entrepreneur. But take these learnings with you and actually implement them.
So, I think your learning is the key takeaway. I mean, whatever you learn, if you implement in your life, that is the key thing for
Yes,
your
yes,
success.
yeah.
And also, in addition to this, I've also seen that you've completed some really great courses online, and they are very popular right now, especially during the pandemic. So, would you suggest some ideas or maybe some ways in which students can take advantage of these courses?
Uh, so, so basically, I can recommend a couple of brilliant courses that you can do from Stanford, and also there is Harvard uh, online business school where you can take up courses. These courses vary from a 1 week duration to like a 1 month duration. So there is something called as, if people would like to note it down, or I can actually put it on the chat window here. Uh, So this is one course that I will highly recommend. It is called the Design Thinking course from Stanford Graduate School of Business. It is an excellent course. It basically helps you build a mindset and build an understanding as to how to think out of the box and build businesses. So it's basically called Design Thinking. There are a couple of other courses that we actually also run as an institute. So we have a leadership and entrepreneurship institute for students. We have one course which I would just put up a link here. Uh, So it's called the Basics of Entrepreneurship course, which basically gives you very detailed ideas as to how to find an idea. Because a lot of people say, "I want to start a business, but I don't know what should I start a business in, or what is the right idea that will help me build a business."
Yes.
So we basically give you ideas from thinking about an idea, how to take it to the market, how to test the market. Most importantly, which is actually the most critical thing for all entrepreneurs, is to raise funding. Because initially you can have like a capital which you have from friends and family or your own savings, but if you want to scale your business and you want to make it big, at some point in time you have to raise funding. Like in Enfield Riders, we raised the funding of about $1 million, close to about 7.5 crores in 2016, which really from our business to here actually went here, because we could much faster scale the business and build it in other countries as well apart from India.
Okay.
And of course, so there are various courses which people can find. Of course, then there is Unacademy and other platforms where basic courses are there. But then, in my opinion, they are not as useful as you would do from courses from Stanford or Harvard online.
Definitely, and they also have a lot of value. I
Absolutely,
mean,
absolutely.
okay. And I would also like to tell you, like the course you mentioned about design thinking, we have also had design thinking workshops in our college
Oh
last
wow!
year as well. Yeah, so and there have been different workshops on how to build your product and then test it in the market. So I mean,
Right,
we also have our ESL working on all of that. So that's really helpful for our students.
brilliant, brilliant.
Yeah. So since you talked about the importance of funding, how did you think that that is, I mean, 2018 is the right time for you to go for funding rounds, and what advice would you give to those people who are ready or maybe expecting to go public or something like that?
Okay, so see, there are two things to this. I'll try and answer it in the simplest way possible. Uh, I think as an entrepreneur, you will always feel that you're ready for funding. But as an investor, it is very critical that people who are looking to fund you, they need to understand that are you ready enough to scale your business or not. Everything boils down to scaling. So if I am an investor today who wants to invest in your business, Piyush can be running a fantastic business, which is servicing better to the clients, making profits, having a good product market fit, has design thinking implemented to basically get the best out of the customers. But if I see that your business cannot scale to a certain level, I will not be interested in funding your business. So I think it is very important for every entrepreneur first to understand how scalable their business is. So see, my favorite example is grocery store. ठीक है, आप अपने घर के आसपास कहीं भी जाओगे तो आपके पास एक किराना की दुकान होगी जो काफी सालों से, काफी सदियों से वहीं पर है, जहां आपको बेसिक साबुन से लेके आपको दाल चावल सब मिल जाएगा. आप थोड़ा दूर जाओगे तो एक मल्टी जनरल स्टोर होगा जो थोड़ा बड़े साइज का होगा, जो थोड़ा फैंसी होगा. वहां आपको अलग अलग ब्रांड्स की चीजें भी मिल जाएंगी, आटा चावल, आपको थोड़ा हायर क्वालिटी चाहिए तो मिल जाएगा. Then you have the D-Marts of the world or the Big Bazaar of the world. वो भी grocery store ही है, but at a much higher level, right? So every business is the right business. आपका किराना वाला नुकसान में नहीं चला रहा है. He is also making money. आपका जो बड़ा जनरल स्टोर है वो भी पैसे बना रहा है, बिग बाजार भी बना रहा है. But as an investor, if you ask me where would I want to put my money, I would want to put my money in Big Bazaar because I know that they can bring volume and they can scale much faster. So if I put money in your lowest kirana store, at best he can become the general store of your society. But for him to become a big bazaar will take much longer. I may place a bet on you if you're a good general store and you have a good capability tomorrow to become a big bazaar. So I think you have to really understand as an entrepreneur or a business owner कि आपके fundraising का सही टाइम आप डिसाइड तभी करो जब आपको ये श्योर हो जाए कि आप अपना स्केल उस लेवल पे लेके जा सकते हो जहां आपका बिजनेस मॉडल इज स्ट्रक्चर्ड वेरी वेल.
So I mean, scalability is the main thing that you should look out for.
Yes, scalability is the key thing.
Okay. And sir, I mean, since you have talked about how do you approach scalability and all that, what advice would you give a founder or maybe a person who is looking out to just grow his business and his startup to be precise? And what is the thing that he should be looking out for? What is the mindset that they should have?
So see, I'll talk from my experience that I think I have learned the maximum from failures. I think as an entrepreneur, the first thing that you need to be adaptive towards is that you should be ready to fail. If you are not ready to fail and accept it, your growth becomes very difficult. Because see, success things will come to you, but they will not teach you as much as your failure is going to teach you. So as an entrepreneur, आपको लगे रहना पड़ेगा. मतलब you need to have that grit and you need to have that willpower के there are going to be 30 days में 20 days which are going to be bad, but you have to focus on the 10 days to be good. Because otherwise अगर आप self motivated नहीं हो, अगर आपका grit नहीं है, आपका willpower उतना नहीं है to take it to the long your long goal that you would want, it becomes difficult. So my key learnings that I have had and I would want to tell every entrepreneur is that be prepared for failure. And there is nothing bad in failing in business, because failing in business will actually make your next move much smoother. So just to give you an insight, in 8 years of my business line, 3 times we have come to actually a stage where we were nearing closure of the business, because either there was some competitor who got funding and they scaled much faster, or at times we were short of revenue and we didn't meet our targets, and expenses become much larger than your income. So those challenges will keep coming, but if you give up, you give up. If you stay in the game, the rewards are really amazing, but it takes time to come to you.
So failure is your best teacher, as people say.
Yes, yes, yes.
And you must keep on like staying in the game and having that grit and perseverance. I mean, that is the only way
Yes,
to succeed.
true.
And talking about more recent times, do you think this pandemic is an opportunity for young people to come out with new ideas? Is it a great time to start out something new?
See, in my opinion, I think that there has never been a better time than this time to start a business, because as much as you say that the market is difficult and things look bleak, uh, always remember that every crisis is an opportunity. जब crisis होता है life में, and in the world this has been proved time and again. So if you go and read history of businesses being built, large businesses like Amazon, Flipkart were actually built by after the Wall Street crisis. उसके बाद everybody said that it's going to be collapse, markets are collapsed, nothing will build up. But great companies actually have been built during after the crisis. So I think it's a fantastic time for all of you to start thinking, start ideating. You know, uh, anything takes time. Even if you jump tomorrow morning at entrepreneurship, trust me, it will take you 6 months to 1 year to even build up basic things. So it's a long journey. You need to take the plunge first, and entrepreneurship is just like आप बचपन में जैसे स्विमिंग सीखने गए थे, तो आपको पूल में उतरना पड़ेगा और फिर हाथ पैर मारने पड़ेंगे, फिर आप तैरना सीख जाएंगे. So take entrepreneurship like that, take building businesses like that, that once you dive into it, you will learn it. But if you think uh, that मैं पहले सीख लूंगा, जब मैं सिक्योर हो जाऊंगा, जब मेरे पास इनफ पैसा होगा, जब मैं राइट टाइम होगा तब स्टार्ट करूंगा, no. So I think it is it couldn't have been a better time. It's one of the best times to actually start businesses. At least start ideating about them, start thinking about them. You will take 6 months to 1 year to build it, but jump into it if you want to build something.
So I think that is really good advice. At least we should start ideating, and I mean, waiting won't get out any results. You must put in efforts, and that is the only good way. Uh,
Right.
okay. So with that note, I would also like our audience to start putting any kinds of queries, any doubts, or anything they would like to ask to Mr. Gujral. And I think we'll take one or two questions from our side, and then we'll begin with the Q&A from the audience. Um, so I think, sir, there is one thing which everyone would like to know. What are your plans for the future? Your plans for both of your ventures? So what is the way forward?
So see, fortunately for us, so as per the new government directives, or if you would have heard the slogan by our prime minister, that uh, you know in a way, local,
Hmm.
is the new thing. Domestic tourism is the new thing. So everything which is getting local attention is going phenomenal. So I think for us, we have always been doing pretty good in international markets. But right now, it's a great opportunity for us to be like vocal for local, and build that uh, within India. And more people, I think, post this pandemic have realizing that you have only one life and you have to live it to the best. Yeah, आप
Definitely.
अभी नहीं करोगे तो कब करोगे, वैसा हो गया सबका. So I think a lot of people want to tick their bucket list. They want to do the kind of adventure that they would want to do. and we are purely focused on bringing in new initiatives, bringing in new campaigns, bringing in new products line for our clientele, which is more aligned within India and more local. So
So you're definitely aiming for Make in Bharat and making India great again.
yes, yes.
And that's a really great thing. And we wish you all the very best for all the new ventures you have been planning about and your ventures that are going so well.
Thank you.
So I think we can start taking the questions from our audience. And I request you to put any questions you want to ask sir in the chat box. Um, okay, so we have got a question. Uh, has there been a very difficult to do or say different wish you have been requested for in your bucket list? So is there something like that?
Very interesting question, Shreya. So yes, we have been had all kind of requests that have actually been very difficult at times. So uh, I remember we had a couple in 2018, who had actually come to us, and they had just got married, and on their bucket list was that they wanted to do a road trip on 5 continents. So they wanted to start from India, but they didn't wanted to take a flight. They said everywhere we want to travel by road and explore that continent. And it actually took us almost about 3 months to plan the logistics and plan everything, but we made it happen. So they we got them a car from India. So they first started from India. They went cross border to Myanmar, then to Vietnam, then to Cambodia, then to Thailand, then to Indonesia, Malaysia, and then to Singapore. So they finished this continent. Then from there we shipped their car to Australia, and then they reached Australia. They did the Australian continent. Then from there we shipped their car to US. They moved to US. They did the entire. So at times these things become very difficult, but it's also very interesting for us to actually plan those things.
I mean, it must give you a lot of satisfaction.
Yes.
Providing your customers a trip to 5 different continents, that's such a big thing. I
Yeah.
mean, and you managing everything, so that's
Yes.
really, really awesome. And sir, I wanted to ask, are all your requests related to bucket list in that business? Are most of them customized? Do you plan the whole trips, or is there some fixed trips as well, like maybe Leh Ladakh or something like that?
So we do have like an option of fixed departures wherein we announce those tours to within India and out. So we have, so every trip that we have a fixed departure is seasonal based. So for Leh Ladakh, you have a certain time. You have only June to September when you can travel. So we have fixed departures to travel during that time. Then in October, November, you can take a trip with us to Bhutan. Then February, March, you can take a trip to Nepal. April, you can take to Thailand. We do Mount Everest base camp that we do in May. So that's a trip to Tibet. So those are fixed departures, but they are very seasonally aligned. But then we have had clients who have come in peak December and said, I want to go to Leh Ladakh because it's snow, but they want to do the trekking. So there is also a Chadar track, which very famous Chadar track, which happens in Leh Ladakh. And the ideal
Okay,
time is November, December, January when you can spot the snow leopard there. So
okay.
so we have fixed tours, but then a lot of people want to curate them.
There is a really interesting question. How has your traveling experience in different regions and culture been a learning chance to be applied in your organization? So, since you've
Yeah.
been a travel enthusiast and you have traveled yourself,
Yes.
how has that helped you?
Yes. So, excellent question, Hirendra. I think, it actually gives me an opportunity to tell you that I think if today somebody asked me that what is my wealth and what is my riches, It's not my college degrees. It's not my two businesses. It's not my social status as a award-winning entrepreneur. It is the travel experiences that I've had. I think what I have learned in my life from traveling to various geographies and understanding cultures of those places, it has been so enriching that I have only come with learning so much, which I have implemented not only to my organization but even to my personal life. If you travel to Africa, for example, and there is a tribe called Masai Mara tribe,
Okay.
which basically resides in Africa, and we have experiences wherein you can go and interact with the tribe, and these are very typical tribal people, Adivasis जो हम बोलते हैं, and you learn living with them for 2-3 days that as humans we can be very self-sufficient. We make it very complicated कि अच्छा अब नया आईफोन लॉन्च हुआ है तो आईफोन लेना है, अब नई गाड़ी आ गई है तो नई गाड़ी लेनी है. But actually, even in this pandemic, if you notice, most of us would have realized that you basically need very basic things for survival in life. You don't need a lot of riches. So I think taking those learnings from tribes and culture and understanding different cultural backgrounds, living in those geographies and traveling to them, enriches you as a person. So yeah, I have applied a lot of that to my organization and to my personal life.
That's really great, sir. And I'm sure you've had beautiful experiences, and they must have helped you in different ways.
Yes.
Uh, Sir, the next question is it often challenging to put a price tag to clients in bucket list ideas, since most of the requests are customized and you need to plan out different things?
So see, I think you know the challenge always is what a client expects and what a client wants to pay. So everybody wants the best of best things at the lowest price possible. So it's not just a challenge for our business, but for any businesses, especially who are into the service industry.
Yeah.
See, आप प्रोडक्ट लेने जाओगे तो आपको पता है कि अगर आप एक नाइकी का जूता ले रहे हो तो वो 5,000 का है तो वो 5,000 का है. Unless they say that there is a 10% or 20% discount on it, you can't walk into a Nike store and say कि मेरे को ये 2,000 में दे दो. It is
Definitely.
5,000. But with a service-based business, you always feel that मुझे बेस्ट सर्विसेज चाहिए बट आप इतना चार्ज क्यों कर रहे हो. सो आई थिंक फॉर सर्विसेज बेस्ड बिजनेस द बिगेस्ट चैलेंज ऑलवेज हैज बीन प्राइसिंग, एंड to put a price tag is primarily based on what experience I can give you, and experiences are actually priceless. You can't put a price tag on that, right? Like, so if I'm going to give you an experience of say arranging a tour for you to 5 continents, if you could do it for yourself, then you don't need my services, right? So I'm charging you for my services to bring that experience in hassle free to you, and for that, if there is a quote that I will give you, you have to pay that. So but in a nutshell, the answer is it is very challenging to put up a price tag.
Yeah, because experiences would always be priceless.
Yes.
You can't put a value on that.
True.
Okay. There is also a nice question. What matters most to you, the destination or the journey? So this can be answered in different ways. Is it your traveling experience, maybe your startup journey?
So see, I will try and answer it in a more maybe a philosophical way, in terms of what happens. Say, if I ask any of you that why do you want to become an entrepreneur? A lot of people say मुझे entrepreneur बनना है, मुझे अपना कुछ start करना है. A lot of people actually miss out on the why. Like, मुझे क्यों बनना है, and like what am I gonna achieve out of it? You're gonna make money, maybe yes, maybe no. You're gonna become like a social media figure, maybe yes, maybe no. All these things are unpredictable, and I always think that when I started my journey, I was exactly the same. I didn't think that what I wanted to do. I just wanted to do a startup. But over a period of time, when you run businesses, you figure that actually what matters is what is the purpose of what you're doing. And the day you realize that what is the purpose of doing that, I think that matters the most. So it is not reaching that कि मेरा business has become 100 crore business or I have raised funding. That is like you are putting a destination. कि जब मैं यहाँ पहुँच जाऊँगा, then I'll say I'm successful. But the whole journey of doing that and then realizing that what is the ultimate purpose of running this business. My ultimate purpose of running the business is at the end of any event or at the end of any tour or any experience that I provide to the clients, the happiness that I see in them, okay, this is the most memorable thing that will stay with me for the rest of my life. When they say that to me, that is my purpose achieved. That I have made somebody add value to their life, which they would have not just bought from money. Because with money, they would have bought a product, but not a quality service. So I think that whole journey of discovering that what is the purpose why you are running that business is very important, and eventually the journey matters and not the destination.
Actually, that's so beautiful and so inspiring, because the kind of satisfaction you would get, that can't be compared to money or maybe the riches you can acquire, because
Absolutely.
you're gifting people memories, and that is something which cannot be put a price tag on.
True.
Um, Going on, the next question is, going on trips after all this time, has this become redundant for you and your team, like traveling to the same destinations more than once?
So Shreya, the answer is yes and no both. I'll tell you why. Why a yes? So of course, if you tell me that I have to go to a very touristy destination like Goa, now after 1, 2, 3, 5, 10 times, Goa is Goa. You have beaches, you have clubs, you have party scenes, you have flea markets, you have open roads. Goa is Goa. But when you ask me about non-touristy destinations like going to Mount Everest, or if you ask me going to Leh Ladakh in India, or if you ask me, traveling uh, to south of India, especially the Kanyakumari belt. Yeah. Now, in these places, no matter how many times you go, your experiences are very different, because these places change a lot with weather. They change a lot with the things that happen in those destinations during that season, on season and off season. So Leh Ladakh during peak season is very different than what Leh Ladakh is during off season. So the touristy place gets monotonous and becomes redundant, but the non-touristy places, every time you go, they have something new to offer. They actually, bring a new perspective to you. कि अरे ये तो मैंने देखा ही नहीं था. ये इसलिए नहीं देखा था क्योंकि जब आप पिछली बार आए थे तो माहौल अलग था. आपका माहौल चेंज होता है तो आप अलग चीजें देख रहे हो तो.
Okay, so that those places have a different aesthetic value and a different feeling.
Right.
So I think with this we'll end on the happy note that, as you said, it is the journey that is important and not the destination. And also the various points that you've given, they are so good and so true. I mean, you must take learnings from the places you study and implement it in your life, and have that grit and perseverance to succeed. So, and I also have a very beautiful Chinese proverb. It's a is that a mile of traveling gives you more experiences and that a whole library of books can give. Just a mile of traveling is so enriching and so beautiful for the human mind. So, on that note, we end the session, and thank you so much, sir, for providing your time and for the beautiful advice that you've given to our students. and for all those aspiring entrepreneurs and startup founders. Um, this would have been a beautiful session, very enlightening, and thank you so much.
No, pleasure is mine, and thank you so much, Piyush, for inviting me. I have to just share that my experience interacting with your entire team so far has been amazing. It was very smooth and well organized. I think I found it very easier to actually communicate to your team, and as a speaker, it becomes very challenging for us when entrepreneurship sales who invite us, they have haphazard things, but you guys are very structured. I had an amazing experience talking and answering the questions. I hope if in any way I could benefit my talks could benefit any of the students, and it would be a great thing for me to actually stay connected with all of you. So I'm just dropping my website. It's called www.baljeetgujral.com. If you ever need any assistance, any help on your entrepreneurship journey, please drop me an email on the website, and I'll try and address and I'll try and reach back to you. And wishing all of you all the best on your journeys ahead. Always remember one thing, that it is the first step which is the most difficult one. uh, Once you take that, there is no stopping you. So please don't think too much in life that whether you should do it or you should not do it. Just take that first step, because whatever it brings to you, that doesn't matter. Whether you take that first step or not, that is going to matter to you at a much later point in time. So don't have any regrets in life that you wish that you could have done those, because trust me, what you will do in your 20s you will never be able to do in your 30s, and in what you do in your 30s you will never be able to do in your 40s, and so on and so forth. So this is the time for you guys. Do whatever you think is the right thing for you to do, and wishing you all the success and luck in your journey ahead.
Thank you so much, sir. And we would love to invite you to our college for the future events. And it has been such a pleasure and such a beautiful session. Thank you so much, sir.
I'll be very happy, and whenever this pandemic gets over, I would love to come and visit your college.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Okay, with this note, we end the session. And I would also like to thank all the participants who have been so interactive. And thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Everyone can leave this meeting. The session is over. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, and everybody can share their feedback or experiences on the groups and can leave this meeting.
Mhm.